Here at the Surgical Cave Hill School of Business and Management, located at the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus, we meet the needs of the upwardly mobile professionals. Our business school functions in an evolving global space where the need to have that competitive edge distinguishes you as a professional. Our academic curriculum offers a variety of programs that gives you that edge. We offer our students a doctorate in business administration. Then, there's our executive masters in business administration. Our Surgical Cave Hill School of Business and Management is for you. Enroll now.
Well, good evening. I'm David Ellis, and welcome to the second edition of the quarterly CARICOM investment report. This is a report that tracks the performance of investments traded on the 6 stock exchanges in CARICOM. Executive Director and CEO of the Sagicor Cave Hill School of Business and Management, Professor Justin Robinson, is the lead presenter this evening. And we are also going to hear from a representative of one of the companies doing business in the Caribbean, a company called NPC Caribbean Clean Energy. This company has as its representative with us this evening its chairman and managing director, Fernando Zúñiga. Well, good evening, and let's first of all introduce you to Professor Justin Robinson as Executive Director and CEO of the Sagicor Cave Hill School of Business and Management. He's also head of the Department of Economics at the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus. Professor Robinson is a national of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and currently serves as head of the Department of Economics, as I told you before, and the Cave Hill School of Business. He obtained his PhD in finance from the University of Manchester in the UK. He also holds an MSc in Finance and Econometrics from Florida International University and a BSc in Management Studies First Class Honors from the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus. His research interests are capital markets in developing countries, public finance, financial risk management, and corporate finance in developing countries. He currently serves as a director of the Central Bank of Barbados and is first vice president of the Barbados Museum and Historical Society. Good evening, Professor Robinson.
Hi, good evening, David. How are you doing? Thanks.
Well, so let's proceed with your presentation, this second report which you're doing for the year.
Okay, thanks very much, David. Good evening to the audience, and thanks for joining us again as we present the second edition of the quarterly Caribbean investment report. So what I'm going to do is quickly take you through the report, and then we can have some questions and a discussion. So the report covers the period April 1st to June 30th, 2021. And our first edition would have been, which is the second quarter of the year. So the first edition would have covered January 1st to March 31st, quarter one of the year. And just to give you a sense of the universe that we cover, or the investments we look at. So we look at investments listed on Bahamas, Barbados, Eastern Caribbean, Guyana, Jamaica, and Trinidad and Tobago stock exchanges. On the slide there, we sort of have the companies by the sectors and by the market they are from. And as you can see, the majority of our companies are in Jamaica. The total companies covered is 211 companies, 125 listed in Jamaica, 24 in Trinidad, 27 in the Bahamas, 13 in the Eastern Caribbean, 13 in Guyana, and 9 in Barbados. Okay, so what happened in quarter two? So for the second quarter of the year, 1.4 billion shares traded on these 6 stock exchanges. Somewhat up from quarter one, where you had 1.2 billion of those shares trading. So it was a more active quarter, the second quarter, in terms of trading. However, again, for the second quarter, more stocks declined than rose. So 74 of the stocks we follow, or 34.5%, posted gains. 104, or 49.7% of them, declined, and 31, 15.6%, were unchanged. Wigton Wind Farm out of Jamaica was again the volume leader, with 211 million of that company's shares trading. Again, following on a strong performance last quarter, where 212 million of their shares traded. And they are in the same sector as our guest company today, in the energy sector. Next in line was Sagicor Select. That's a mutual fund by Sagicor. Sagicor Select MD. So that's a mutual fund that tracks the manufacturing and distribution sector. And 133 million of those shares traded in Q2. Next in line was another Sagicor mutual fund, their financial mutual fund, where 126 million traded. And I'm quite interested in those two funds because that's sort of the innovation we are looking for in our financial markets, where you as an investor, you no longer have to go and pick individual stocks. You can invest in this Sagicor Select Manufacturing and Distribution Fund and immediately get exposure to the major manufacturing and distribution companies in our region. Similarly, the Sagicor Select Financial Fund, where again, you can get exposure to a diversified portfolio. Trans-Jamaica Highway was the fourth most active, with 91 million of those shares trading. Again, another very interesting company where this is a government initiative initially in terms of that major highway across Jamaica, but now this has been transitioned trading on the stock exchange. So again, a very interesting way to fund public infrastructure in a way that doesn't add to government debt. And then you have Mail Pack out of Jamaica, 65 million of those. And again, as we saw with the first report, one of the underlying issues, you have the majority of things listed in Jamaica, and also by a long way, the most active market. So our 5 most actives come out of Jamaica. However, investors had a better quarter than Q1, so we began to see some recovery in the second quarter. So our 2 main indices, the Caribbean All Share Index, so that's a proprietary index at the Sagicor School of Business, where we construct this index, tracking the performance of all the stocks across the region. And at June 30th, 2021, the companies across the region, their market value was 33.2 billion. So the companies were worth $33.25 billion, and these are in US dollars. The index stood at 1050.4, which is a 51.2 point increase from last quarter, showing a return of 5.38%. So in Q1, we would have seen the Caribbean stock market struggling post-COVID and during the COVID and posting declines. In Q2, as the economies reopen, we are seeing some pickup, and the index is rebounded up by 51.2 points, or 5.38%. And as mentioned earlier, 1.4 billion shares change hands in Q2 across the region. Our CSX 30, which is our model portfolio, so to speak, where we track the 30 most influential stocks across the region. And in line with the index, the CSX 30 is showing a strong rebound. So for those 30 companies at June 30th, they were valued at $20.2 billion US dollars, the total value. The index stood at 1065.29, up 68.19 points, or 6.8%. And I kind of needed that to happen to boost my confidence, because this is our model portfolio. And if you remember last quarter, our model portfolio was showing a negative balance, which we sort of don't like, but so the model portfolio is rebounding. If we sort of benchmark that against the Standard & Poor's 500, which tracks the US market, stocks continue to do well in the US in quarter. This quarter is that the volatility index for the Caribbean was quite high, 19.42, which shows that there was quite a lot of trading with prices up and down. Normally, our prices are a lot more stable, but it seems like investors are really figuring out where to invest their money, what is correct pricing in this COVID environment. So we are seeing quite a bit of volatility. Although, as we would expect from the CSX 30, our model portfolio, the volatility is much less, 9.86, again showing much less risk. As we normally report, what are our 5 biggest gainers this week? Okay, they were all out of Jamaica. We had Palace Amusements up 127%. So that's a significant increase. Those investors are smiling all the way to the bank, although the volume was quite low. Only 11,000 shares traded for the quarter. JetCon out of Jamaica is up 69% on strong volume, 7.3 million. And Fosrich out of Jamaica is also up by 62%. Again, very good volume, 6.4. ECL out of Jamaica up 59.74%, again on good volume, 2.3. And MIG, an entertainment company, up 56.3%, again on very strong volume. And one of the key points we really want to get out of this program is to really let people across the region know that there are opportunities to place your money within our region and earn quite solid returns. And again, reminding you that these are returns in US dollars, and these investors are really smiling. Our 5, we usually again highlight the 5 biggest declines. MTLJ out of Jamaica down 55.5%. Siboney, that's a big hotel group out of Jamaica, down 36%. If you remember last quarter, that was our strongest performance. PBS down 28%, but very, very low volume. AMG Packing down 25%. And EHL out of Trinidad. So nice to see another company from one of the other markets making it in, even though it's in a slightly negative manner. Down 24% with 18,455 shares being traded. We usually try to give a little investment tip, so we call it investment school. And investors who hold shares usually find that one of their most difficult decisions is you've bought a stock, when to sell it. We often find that's really a very difficult decision for an investor. And it's usually difficult because if you own the stock and the value has gone down and you're losing money, when you sell it, you are locking in that loss. And investors are normally reluctant to do that. You're locking in the loss, you're really taking it. On the other hand, if something is rising, you don't really want to sell a stock that is rising. So when to sell a stock is normally one of the more difficult decisions. Now, there are many factors that can tell you when is the right time to sell. And we're just going to highlight one factor this week, and we continue this quarter, sorry. So it was a good sell signal is that there's a change in the company's fundamentals. As an investor, you bought the stock because of the company's fundamentals and its business plan. But if something has changed fundamentally in the company, so the top management might be quitting or forced out. You bought the stock because of confidence in that management's team ability to execute. A new CEO is taking the company off in a direction that investors believe is wrong. Maybe their pipeline of new products is drying up. They have new products not receiving regulatory approval. There's some fundamental shift in technology. They're losing face. The central point is that when something changes, the investor has to re-examine whether or not it's the same company he or she bought. If it's not the same company, then it might be the right time to sell. So a sell signal is when there is some fundamental negative change in the company. You bought that stock or that company shares for a particular set of reasons. If one or more of those reasons change in a negative way, that may often be a good signal to sell. So that's it from my end, David, with the report for this quarter. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. One question which I have for you is, when you look at the weak markets, the weaker markets, let's say like Barbados, to what extent are you seeing a trend which suggests that investors who might ordinarily have gone to invest in a market such as this are turning to Trinidad, and in particular to Jamaica, which is particularly strong? Is there any such evidence?
Okay, so we don't have a lot of evidence at this point of cross-border trading, which I think is one of the genuine weaknesses across the region, in that these are very much nationally segmented markets. And one of the things we really hope to achieve with this program we keep running is that if we build an awareness among persons about the opportunities across the region, that can serve as a catalyst to removing the regulatory and other barriers that affect persons' ability to move money across the region. So if the Jamaican investors had easy access to the Barbados, Eastern Caribbean, or Trinidad stock exchanges, we might very well see some life breathe into those markets. And investors who are sitting on the sidelines in Barbados, Eastern Caribbean, Trinidad, with very limited opportunities on their own exchanges, the stock prices don't move. If they have access to the Trinidad market or the Jamaica market, then we are expanding their universe of possible investments.
Okay, let's go over to the chairman and managing director of NPC Caribbean Clean Energy, Fernando Zúñiga. Perhaps before we do so, Professor Robinson, you perhaps need to lay the foundation for his presence in this discussion this evening.
Okay, again, thank you very much. And we want to thank Fernando for joining us. So one of the things we want to do with the program, and I really want to thank David for coming on board and helping us, because my journalistic skills are zero, and this forum really requires an experienced journalist, is to highlight companies across the Caribbean. I'm of the view that that we have a lot of forums and sources of information about what's happening with governments, the central bank, IMF, IDB, and others. A lot of people produce stuff on the macroeconomy of the region, but we know very little about what is happening in Caribbean companies, what are the investments available at that more microeconomic level. And quite often when we hear of the private sector, we often hear of it in a very negative way, but I think there are a lot of very positive stories out there in the private sector. Of course, they're negative with everything else, but it's really a forum to expose the Caribbean public to the companies that are really expected to drive growth in our region. And we hear a lot about renewable energy across our region, but we tend to hear it from governments and policymakers. We would only like to hear about it from businesses, the persons who are actually doing this on a hands-on, trying to make money from it and trying to make it happen. So I really wanted to set that context where we wanted to hear from Fernando a bit about his company, what they're doing, what are their business plans, why should we invest in his company?
Proceed.
Perfect. Then I think then I'll take from here. And first of all, thanks a lot for the invitation, for the kind invitation for MPC to be in this session today. So we are very happy to share with us who who is MPC actually, what is our company, MPC Caribbean Clean Energy Fund, and what we have been doing actually in the past, and where are our plans for the future. So very briefly, for the people who are not familiar with our company, MPC Caribbean Clean Energy Fund is a Caribbean company which enables private and institutional investors to invest in renewable energy projects across the Caribbean and Central America through our company. So actually, we're also very proud also to say to be one of the first companies to be listed simultaneously in the Jamaican and Trinidad Stock Exchange already for 2 years. And we are, the company is being managed from MPC Capital, which is an investment and asset manager from Germany, from where we are a team of investment professionals with more than 20 years of experience in the renewable energy industry, starting in Europe and later on expanding to other regions in the world, where we decided to focus in the Caribbean, as we saw a great opportunity for private investors, and our idea is to give an easy way for common investors, and retail investors to get access to this kind of investment, because in the past it has been always meant to be for larger investors and potentially this kind of projects, and maybe I will go later on what type of investments are we doing, but before it was maybe limited to some kind of investors. But now with the MPC Caribbean Clean Energy Fund, we were able to give this opportunity to be open in the market, and what we have been doing over the last years, we have been developing and especially identifying renewable energy opportunities. And by renewable energy, we mean especially solar power plants, wind farms, energy efficiency power plants, as well as microgrid opportunities for which include sometimes energy storage. One of our flagship projects at the moment is our Jamaican project in the Paradise Park in Jamaica, which is a 51 megawatt solar PV plant, which is already operational since 2 years. This project has a long-term power purchase agreement with the JPS, and this gives us the security to offer to the investors a quasi-fixed income through these assets. So MPC, through our network and our experience, we've been identified similar opportunities like the Jamaican project. A similar one we have been, for example, another asset that we have under operation under the company is a wind farm in Costa Rica, which has been operational for 5 years already, with very good performance, technically speaking, and also with a long-term power purchase agreement with the government with the local state utility company. And well, this is our objective, to identify and the risk opportunities, especially to give our investors the security that the investments that they're doing in our company have a secure and long-term revenue. And also, and not less important, all the impact and the benefits for our environment, and also in the transition that each of the countries in the Caribbean needs towards depend less in fossil fuels or in imports from oil, and more being able to deploy their own resources in their own country. So this is in a nutshell what is MPC Caribbean Clean Energy doing, and I think it is important to remark that the company is managed by an experienced team based out of Germany, based out of in Panama, and also with our local teams in Jamaica, Costa Rica, Trinidad, and etc. So this is in a nutshell.
I believe quite a number of people would be curious to get a sense of who has been investing in your fund within the Caribbean. And apart from the two projects that you mentioned, the one in Jamaica and the other in Costa Rica, are there any others within the region that you can speak about?
Yeah, well, actually, from the investors that currently, I mean, as of March 31st, actually, one of our biggest investors is the Teachers Credit Union from Trinidad and Tobago. They have, since the very beginning, when we launched on our fundraising activities, one of our most proactively interested in our company. And same from Sagicor, which a lot of support from the Sagicor groups and different environment companies from the Sagicor group investing in the company. Then we have also, well, from the retail investors, local investors, Jane fund managers. We also have actually the Development Bank of Jamaica as one of our investors. And they are currently the main shareholders in the structure. And also, I mean, besides the projects which we have already invested in, we have a pipeline of projects which the team is currently analyzing. Actually, we have just recently made a press release less than a month ago for the acquisition of one of the largest solar assets in the Dominican Republic. Is the Monte Plata, which is an operational solar farm, which includes also a second phase. So not only an operational project, but also a project which is under development. So we have a very diversified portfolio of investments in different, in terms of technology, also in terms of geographies. We are also very active right now in Barbados as well, looking for especially rooftop projects, which will be benefit from a feed-in tariff from the governments. Yeah.
Before I come to other participants to get their questions to you and to Professor Robinson, what do you see as some of the main challenges that you confront when it comes to investment in the Caribbean?
The question is from I hear Justin or myself?
For you.
For me, yes. So, well, actually, one of the main challenges to be is, since we are exposed to many different jurisdictions, we really need to get into the details of each of the countries where we are actively investing. So, first of all, is we need to be very, we need to understand the timings, also the processes from the governmental perspective, because a renewable energy project, it encompasses many aspects, from the financial perspective, from the technical perspective, from a legal perspective, from a regulatory perspective. So it is very important to have an experienced team, because first of all, we will need to identify how is the regulatory market in the country, how the renewable energy projects are being treated, or what kind of incentive or regulatory frameworks does exist. Then we will need to jump into the technical aspects to identify places where the asset will be performing at their best, because as we all know, Caribbean is prone to extreme weather conditions. So within the places where we are actively investing or developing, we will need to identify the best area in order to secure an asset for the long term. Then later on, it comes then our due diligence processes. Our due diligence processes are key for us from all perspective, compliance perspective, technical perspective, so to make sure that we will have an asset that won't be having any issue from the legal perspective. And then finally, also from the financial sector, we normally, the assets where we are investing, normally we make a mixture between equity and debt. So it is very important to have a financial institution from the debt side in order to accompany us during the process of investing. So it is the challenges actually is because we have to cover many areas of a project, not only the technical side, but probably the whole side, also on the permitting side, environmental licenses, construction licenses, dealing with the local municipalities, how to treat also the social and environmental aspects, which is so very important for the company, how to better enter into the communities, and what type of impact we can really demonstrate on the short and long term. So I would say those are many of our challenges in the area.
Professor Robinson, your thoughts on that challenge?
Yes, so again, I think that points to something we've been talking about, and I think it's a double whammy for a company like this, where you have challenges with the ease of business, the ease of doing business in each country. So if you're a domestic investor, then you have to deal with the ease of doing business in that country. But when you're trying to do cross-border business, then you multiply that difficulty by the number of countries that you are doing business with. And there are a number of instruments in front of CARICOM. You know, there's a CARICOM investment policy. And there are a number of policy papers on the table at CARICOM that are meant to address these issues. And if we are to really have meaningful economic growth and private sector-led growth in particular, then a lot of these hurdles have to be addressed. And that is solely in the political realm. These are regulations that our policymakers, politicians, only they can give that regulatory certainty and that regulatory ease. And we know that the ease of doing business is difficult in each country individually. And then when you try to do cross-border business, then it just gets multiplied by each country you try to do business in. And for these investments to be at a scale that they are efficient, you actually need this portfolio of assets. So the idea that you're gonna have just done segmented by country, then you're not getting at a scale that you can maximize your efficiency.
So we have about 39 participants all told here. Let's take the opportunity to get some questions and some answers by throwing the discussion open to the floor.
I see that Ria, I see Ria has her hand up.
Ria, turn on your mic, you might be muted.
I just wanted to learn more about investing in MCP. MPC. Are there any?
He wants to hear a little more, and I can tell you that today the company, it closed at 117 Jamaican dollars on the Jamaica Stock Exchange. So that's about 78 US cents per share. So again, I mean, I think it's really important that, because I know a lot of you on the call are taking our Investing 101 class and you have some interest in investing. So for less than a US dollar per share, you can buy into a company and have access to a regional portfolio of renewable energy projects. I mean, and this is a massive opportunity. The RE opportunity in the region is massive, and it would be a shame if Caribbean people did not become shareholders in this company, which is one example of a company really seeking to do RE on a scale across our region. So the share price is cheap, relatively less than $1 US, so it allows you to get in as a shareholder. And Fernando, you want to tell them a little bit about how they could invest in the shares of your company if they wanted to?
Well, I think it's in the market. Normally, we've been the last rise. The last IPO was last year. Yeah, it was last year. But I mean, I think it is possible through your local managers, JN fund managers, depending if you're in Jamaica or in Trinidad. So I think through Jamaica is JN fund managers, and through Trinidad is with the First Citizens. So that'll be I think the easiest way to.
So Trinidad is First Citizens. I didn't get the name from Jamaica.
JN fund managers.
Okay. And so, again, yeah, go ahead, David.
I was coming back to Ria, because having heard all that has been said, I wanted to get a sense of what are her thoughts on how she sees the landscape. Having raised that question about how you're going to get involved in investing.
Using what I learned from Professor Robinson lectures for one-on-one investing, and learning about what the REI for MPC is, I'm thinking that it may be in my best interest to even to check it out a bit more, and probably touch it to go after a bit, but I still need to figure out how I'm going to do it from Barbados where I am, because I'm a little bit not sure completely.
Okay,
But
so to answer your question, so the company is listed on the Barbados, on the Trinidad and Jamaica stock exchanges. So if you are in Barbados and you are interested in buying the shares, what I would suggest is that you make contact with one of the local brokers, because most of them have regional contacts. So there's a First Caribbean Bank here in Barbados, and they seem directly involved because Fernando mentioned that, so that would be a good port of call. But if you went to like a Signia, even Signia brokers, they can certainly find, if you place the order, the guys will find a way to get you the shares. So again, for citizens, seems an obvious place to go, or Signia, or even Sagico. Sagico would have some brokerage services that they provide. Most of the banks, Republic also has brokerage, Scotia Royal Bank. It's not a big part of their business. They probably don't get a lot of people inquiring, but if you were to make a contact and wanted to place an order for a certain quantity of shares through their regional network, they can be able to get you those shares. If I were to pick two, I would say First Citizens, and then I would say Signia, because Signia brokerage is a large part of what they do, so they have an incentive to try to make the transaction happen for you.
understood. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other hands up? In the meantime, though, what comes across is that we really lack information in this region. I mean, apart from an exercise like this, the very names that you have just mentioned, I'm unaware of any significant promotion or advertising of what is available at the investment level across the region. And I'm curious as to what are some of the factors that may be influencing that. Because unless you get into something of this nature, average people who have money to invest will tell you, I have nowhere to place it. I can't put it in the banks because they will rob me, that's what they say. And there's nothing else. So what's going wrong here?
Okay, so in terms of, I guess, the way economists would answer that, we would say it's an example of what we call a missing market. So you have people with money to invest. You have investment opportunities. And that is usually solved through some financial intermediaries that provide those brokerage services and provide that information. What seems to be missing, except really in Jamaica in a major way, are financial intermediaries that get up every day and try to sell these products to consumers. We are seeing it in a limited way, but from NCB Capital Markets in Jamaica, I see that they do quite a bit of their investment forums. But what we don't have outside of Jamaica really are financial intermediaries that get up every day. It is their business to try to sell these products to investors. We are trying to do our little bit here by putting this report there. And I mean, I want to thank the journalists for coming in and really making people, because the brokerages are there. If you wanted to buy 1,000 shares of MPC tomorrow and you walked into Signia, they could make it happen, or for citizens. What we really lack in many ways is really, as you say, that information about what's out there, how well they're doing. I don't have a good answer as to why the private companies and trees are not doing it in a major way outside Jamaica, but we are trying to do our little bit in here. And again, I want to thank you, David, giving your access to the broader public for kind of coming on board with us in this.
Thank you. Violet Brown. I hope I pronounced it correctly. Please.
That looks like Villette.
Villette. Okay, thank you.
I'm a Vinci, so I know the Vinci pronunciations.
Thank you very much for the education.
Yeah, okay. So to the company representative, now you spoke of the risk, inherent risk for your your company in terms of vulnerability to disasters, hurricanes in particular, is what's coming to mind. What exactly are some of the mitigating factors that your company has in its plans? Because it sounds like a great investment. The entry price at 70 something cents US is great, but what is the company's strategy for mitigating against the natural disasters? What's your insurance and reinsurance like?
Unmute.
I was on mute, sorry. Sure, thanks. And very good question. Actually, this has been also one of the most important questions during the fundraising and the IPO activities. And actually, that's why I always wanted to emphasize that experience is key for this type of companies in the renewable energy sector. So everything that has been happened in the past in other countries or similar weather conditions is important to be applied. So I'm going to sound very technical maybe, but I think it's important to give these type of explanations because first of all, the location. I mean, we are in the Caribbean. We are exposed to these extreme weather conditions, but still, for example, Jamaica, we know that from history, from historical information, from the type of hurricanes and the direction that they go, we know, or it is known that the southwestern part of Jamaica is the place which is less prone to the affectation of these hurricanes. This is from a technical, from a geographical point of view. However, also during construction, we have we select tier 1 construction companies and also tier 1 material which is needed, especially for these conditions. There are already engineering standards which are especially for category 5 hurricanes. For example, normally in a place where hurricanes are not part of the weather conditions of the location, you normally, when you install the solar panels, you go perhaps 1 meter deep down the earth. But for example, in the Caribbean or in zones where we have this exposure, we have to go even further, 1.5, even 2 meters. So this is another point that we take on top of that. And third is also the insurance. We are working with the insurance company, which are experienced in the Caribbean, they understand the risks. And also we include business interruption for the time in case of these extreme conditions, that we ensure revenues even though the project might be being delayed. Not actually because what it has been happening or what we have seen is that probably the power plant, the solar plant will be in perfect conditions after hurricanes, but maybe transmission, which are independent from the power plant, are maybe affected. But then it's when business interruption insurance come in place, and that's the way we secure revenues, even though of these conditions. So we try to mitigate from the technical perspective and also from the insurance perspective, so that at the end we have a neutral impact. So that's the way we work. And again, experience on this type of assets, it is key, so that we, since the very beginning, in the developing stage, construction stage, and operation stage, we are mitigating such risks.
Okay, great.
Anita, sorry, you wanted to follow up?
Yeah, just one other thing on the business interruption. So, me getting a little technical with you. In terms of your business interruption, is the company schedule for business interruption inclusive of, well, it's a shares, it's not dividends. I was just thinking of ensuring that in rough times, because we will have disasters, that your business interruption also includes a certain percentage for your shareholders. I know that we're the last resort, the last on the list to be paid, but it is something to consider. I'm just pushing the hat here because I am quite interested in the company. I like your strategy in terms of going through the region and not just staying in one country. And my last question is, do you have plans on expanding into the countries like Guyana? This might be your not wanting to show out your secrets, but if you can you share that?
Yeah, no, sure. And just going back on the insurance, just to clarify, actually, I mean, as shareholder of the share, you are also, well, same protected as the company. So it is the same insurance. It is not just perhaps from the waterfall. Normally it goes first the loan with the
Yes.
banks. But normally, I mean, those insurance especially are requested in order to cover not only the interest payment, but also the potential dividend distribution. So that from that perspective, the business interruption covers all the way to the final shareholders of the project. Regarding expansions, yes, actually, our mandate actually is very specific. It's CARICOM or Caribbean countries, actually, CARICOM countries, and Central America. We've been. I actually was 2 years ago in Guyana, at the CARICOM actually headquarters. And we've been, I mean, actually, we're very, very interested. However, as I was mentioning in the beginning, we normally start by a regulatory, from a regulatory perspective to understand what is the framework. We understand that Guyana has a lot of interest to turn into renewables. There are some efforts going on for the first solar power plants. However, at this moment, for my knowledge, those plants are being or are planned to be financed by grants. Which means there's no, at this moment, like a space for equity investors as MPC Caribbean Clean Energy Fund. But this is what we see in the process of a country entering into the renewable energy space. Normally, they start by proving the concept in the country. We know from the technology perspective, there's nothing else to prove. I mean, this technology has been for more than 30 years. So, but we are really looking into these opportunities. We're constantly seeing what type of tenders or private investors are there. That's actually part of within the company. I'm actually responsible for the origination, for the identification of opportunities. This moment, for example, we're seeing or waiting in Jamaica for a new tender from JPS. We're actually already developing our own, another second project in Jamaica, but from the permitting perspective and waiting how to secure the offtake. But yes, I mean, Guyana is part of our target countries, but we need also to wait to see what type of opportunities are available.
Yes, and just to mention that JPS is the electric utility, main utility in Jamaica. And I think there's a similar question in the chat from Anita. Do you have any upcoming projects for Trinidad and Tobago?
Yes, actually, Trinidad is also a very important market for us, also for the investors that we have there. There are currently 2 initiatives. One was an initiative from the government of Trinidad and Tobago for a tender to build the first solar power plant. This was a competitive process. At the moment, I think the process is still not being, well, they have already awarded probably to a local, well, not a local, to a big energy company there in Trinidad. At the moment, this is the only tender available. So we are waiting for more opportunities to come to participate. And also we know that there are plans to build a solar plant in the airport of Piarco, of Port of Spain. However, it's a similar situation as in Guyana. The funds to build it comes from a grant. So actually what they're tendering is the construction, but not the really like the plant and the ownership of the plant. So we at this stage, we are pretty much looking into the pipeline there, like identify what type of opportunities they are. And hopefully there will be a new tender for the government so that MPC can participate in the process.
Yeah, I mean, David, I have a question. So for someone seeking to invest in MPC, what should be their time horizon? Is this a stock they would expect to see some quick returns from, or this is a stock that if you go in, you should be prepared to be in for a while before you see those returns? And if it's a longer term, what's your sense of the timeline before an investor would see some serious returns?
So actually, yeah, I mean, the initial vision, it is, I mean, this type of project has steady cash flows, almost steady cash flows. So on a yearly basis, we are we are pursuing to have a yearly cash yields on an annual basis. However, the main target is on the long term, and which means planning an exit to selling the portfolio of assets altogether in a period of 8 years, more or less, 8 to 10 years at the max. We've been already 2 years in the market. However, this asset provides a steady cash flow year by year, or well, that's the target of the company. And but the main idea, or the largest return will be coming at the very end of the asset life of the company, which we are expecting to be in year 8 or 10. And the idea is to allocate this portfolio of projects once we consolidate more megawatts, more projects, more in Jamaica, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, and we sell that to another long-term fund, and that's when we can expect the higher returns. But on a yearly basis, we have cash yields.
So I'm curious about how much competition you anticipate in this particular field, though.
Well, actually, that was the main reason we came into the region, because we saw a lot of opportunities, but not so much competition from private equity investors. What we have seen in the past is a lot of grants, multilateral companies or governments financing this, but not really giving an access to private investors to invest. So we still saw like competition is becoming little by little. We know that some groups, local family offices or local groups are getting into this, but on a local base. With MPC, as we are a regional player, we're able to identify and competition still, I think it's we are one of the few, and that means that we still have more room to cover.
Professor Robinson,
yes,
yours, because we're approaching.
Yeah, we're close. So I just wanted to have one question, because you mentioned the steady cash flow. So can you speak a little bit about your dividend policy for the company?
The dividend policy is distribute as when it's available. So there's no idea right now to restrict cash. So that's the first thing. I mean, the idea is always to distribute dividends. Actually, we have been already able to distribute the first one right after the first IPO. We were able to distribute more or less at 9% cash yield. Second year with the COVID, we were not able to distribute. We decided to wait during 2020 in order to wait for 2021. But normally the cash yield, the variation is really depending on the solar or wind resource, which we already have identified on the long term. We have studies from independent engineering companies. So the cash yield, yeah, the dividend distribution is always as available.
You need to unmute.
Which just also to clarify, normally these projects are, as I was mentioning in the beginning, they're partially financed by banks. So even though there might be in the company free cash, we also have to comply with the minimum covenants from the bank. So in case there's no, it's also, I mean, it really depends first with the banks, and then if there's a dividend, we distribute. And the idea is at least once a year.
Professor Robinson.
Yes, no, so thanks for that. We're running out of time. And I guess what I want to thank Fernando for joining us, but this is the magic of the modern financial markets. You can sit in your house in Barbados, David, call your broker, make an investment in a company like this, and become a shareholder in a company providing energy to the Jamaica Power Company, a solar project in Trinidad and Tobago, stuff in Costa Rica, etc., etc. And to me, that's the magic of the modern financial markets. And I think we have to make a special effort to allow our Caribbean nationals to really build personal wealth and financial independence through accessing these investment vehicles.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all of the participants in this evening's session.
Thank you very much, everybody.